afternoon, good evening, good night to everyone who is joining this week's Amazon interview coaching, the free event from Day One Careers. I see there's now a whole two of you together with me, so welcome, folks. My name is Evgeny. As you might have gathered from some of the videos you might have watched, so Gigi and I run Day One Careers, and this is our weekly free Amazon interview coaching event where we answer all questions related to behavioral interviews at Amazon. Let's get cracking. So, folks, while I'm talking about some intros and housekeeping, please let me know in the chat where you guys are dialing in from, where you're connecting from. Is it morning? Is it afternoon? Is it evening? Is it nighttime with you guys? While you guys are doing that, also tell me if you can hear me and see me well, because sometimes we've got some technical issues. We want to make sure we don't have them this time. So, folks, Gigi won't be joining today as she's got something that she needs to take care of. So you've got myself for the whole hour. And in case you don't know who I am, so Gigi and I both founded Day One Careers. So we are both former Amazonians, former hiring managers, former prolific interviewers, and we established our own Amazon interview preparation businesses at about the same time. We both figured that a lot of candidates with absolutely amazing profiles that normally would have been seriously considered for jobs oftentimes would not be able to progress through stages because their interview skills just weren't up to scratch. And we could totally see the difference between the candidates who have had some interview prep, however and wherever they got it and didn't. And so we decided to create a business that makes Amazon interview preparation available to all. And that's why we're here, and that's why you guys are here. So Gigi used to run her own business called Amazon Interview Wiz Academy. I started Day One Careers as a brand. Then we merged them together after we met. And so, long story short, here we are. So how is this going to work? So you have a chat in this event. So please use this chat to, in addition to letting everyone know where you're coming in from, post your questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer. So it sounds pretty simple, right? But just some housekeeping rules. First, if you guys have a very generic question, such as, hey, I've got an interview with Amazon next week, or I've got a loop with Amazon next week, do you have any tips? So for general tips, we've got plenty of them. They're all in the YouTube channel, and there's literally nothing, we left no stone unturned on our YouTube channel. We also have a blog, which you can access at blog.dayone.careers, so you can go there as well. And literally all generic questions we're going to answer there. Then on the other hand, if you've got a question about a specific functional role, such as you're interviewing for a construction manager for AWS to build data centers, and you're asking us for input or advice on any of the functional screening or functional assessment specifically for data center construction managers. Unfortunately, we just don't have the expertise on that because Gigi and I, we used to be in marketing, and I was in sales and business development sometimes. Teams at Amazon are free to structure their functional assessments exactly as they see fit, unless, of course, you are applying for a technical role. But then again, we might be able to direct you towards some resources that other candidates have found useful, but it's not our area of expertise. So we can hopefully advise you on anything that has to do with the behavioral interview process and hygiene interview questions and the likes. So why don't you guys start adding your questions? So I've got one question already that I can see, and I'm going to be bringing them up here on the screen, and I'm going to try and answer them all. So let's keep that queue going, guys. So I'm going to bring up the first question on to the screen, but this is the only one that we have. So folks, don't be shy. Anything is good to go. So this is a question from Shivam. Hey, Shivam. So the question is it ethical or possible to renegotiate the offer with Amazon before the joining date even after accepting the offer. So ethics is a tricky one, right? And this is something where I guess, it's my opinion versus someone else's opinion. Where I come from is if you're negotiating in good faith in general, whether it's before, after, and I'm going to get to whether it's actually logistically possible, right? But just bear with me. So on the ethics part, if you're negotiating in good faith, and in fact, if you're making any decisions regarding to your employment in good faith, then as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any ethical issues with it. Now, obviously, you did accept the offer, and there is an exchange of promises, but it all depends on what has changed, right? So there might have been different situations, different inputs that you have received after you have accepted the offer. So it really depends. And that's why, if there are genuine big circumstances that, for example, led you to believe that you have completely, lowballed yourself and accepted a number that you shouldn't have accepted, then I guess, on an ethical perspective, I don't see any issues. Now, where you will have issues most likely is before the joining date and after accepting the offer, if you actually decide to renegotiate that offer. Because the minute you accept the offer and the minute Amazon triggers the onboarding process, or any other company, not just Amazon, technically you will be, before you started employment, before you signed your contract, right? If you're in between, say you verbally accepted, right, and you haven't started your contract, you might be in a position where you will have to reject that offer, right? Because obviously once you sign your contract, and please don't kind of quote me on this because I'm not a lawyer, but in most cases, once you sign your contract, your employment begins. And if you basically say, well, I reject your offer, well, no, that would be your resignation in most cases. But again, check with your legal professional in case you're concerned. So you will be rejecting an offer after accepting it. So that means you will be rescinding the offer. It will trigger, the issue with that is that Amazon may just say, well, sorry, you've accepted the offer. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do. I have never had this happen in my hiring manager career. I have never had this, none of our candidates, none of our students have ever experienced this situation. So obviously it will be quite a high tension situation. You will upset a lot of people. I don't know what implications that would bring in terms of any of the records that would be left on your profile. So it's something that I would try to avoid as much as possible, because if you research your pay scales and pay ranges, or compensation ranges rather, for the role that you're applying to, there shouldn't be any need for you to do such a drastic thing as to go back on your acceptance of the offer before you start employment. But if there is any additional context that you'd like to share, I'm more than happy to pick it up here and discuss it further. But otherwise, folks, keep your questions going, because at the moment, this is the only question that we have with Shivam. We've got a whole hour of questions and questions to answer. So let's keep them going. So we have a question here from Victoria. What's your experience on international relocations? Are on-site interviews usually required for internal candidates? So what's my experience with international relocations? Well, I have hired folks, have accepted folks into my team that relocated internationally. So it's, different hiring managers have different ideas in terms of the kind of talent that they're looking for to join their team. Some hiring managers are more open to internal applications, some are less. Some roles will come with relocation packages, some won't. So it kind of depends on every individual situation. I guess your specific question is, are on-site interviews usually required for internal candidates? Well, it depends on where the role is, right? If the role is at the same site, then yes, then you will have to interview. You will have fewer interviewers as opposed to having to interview for the same role externally. And there's also no expectation that you will have to raise the bar as long as the role that you're interviewing for is at the same level at your current role, which in 99.999% of cases, that's exactly the case. You would be moving horizontally, in which case your interviews would likely go very similar in a similar way as your external interviews, but there won't be any expectation that you will raise the bar. However, there will be an expectation from the hiring manager that you will have the skills and experience to do the role. Now, even if you're very new to Amazon and let's say you're moving within, I don't know, you've spent 2 years in the role and you decide to move teams, and you need to interview for your role, you can use experience before Amazon to conduct your behavioral interviews with the new team, which is exactly what a whole bunch of folks would do. It's exactly what I did when I was moving roles. So it's totally possible. Your experience before Amazon is experience, right? They're looking for you when you're moving internally, when you're having your conversations with hiring managers. They're looking at your professional profile in totality at Amazon, before Amazon, and there's no reason why you should not use those situations and stories in your interviews. But if you have any other questions about internal moves at Amazon, feel free to add, and I'm more than happy to take them. Folks, that's pretty much it that we have. The queue is empty, so I can just end the show early in case you guys don't have any questions. But I'm here until 6 p.m. GMT. So let's let me know what else you've got in your mind, folks. There's a very, very tiny group of 5 people we have here. So we've got Evgeny here joining. Hi everyone. Hey Evgeny, what's your question? Let's have a chat. Evgeny, I think you might have joined our community as well. You're suggesting that the stream on LinkedIn is off. That's very strange, because seemingly it's telling me that we are live on LinkedIn, but I don't really know what's happening. But anyways, Evgeny, great to see you. So let me know what your question is, and in fact, anyone else who is here who's just joined. I saw some folks have just joined. Let me know what your questions are. So the way that this show works, just to remind everyone, is you paste your questions, you type your questions in the chat box. They appear in front of me. I'm bringing them up on the screen, and I answer them, or I tell you that I can't answer them. And everything is possible. So we've got, I'm just going to share some folks who are joining from different places. So we've got, so actually Victoria, who we've just spoken to, so she's joining from Sao Paulo. Great to see you. And we've got Pablo here joining from Barcelona in Spain. Hope you have a much better weather in Barcelona, Spain, that we have here. So folks, let's get those questions rolling, because unless you have any other questions, I might as well say thank you and see you at the next show. So let's keep it going. Right. So here we have a question. Cool. Right. I believe this name is pronounced as Esuyakal, but please forgive me if I've just butchered your name. You're joining from Ethiopia, or actually you introduced yourself as Josie. A little easier for me, but hey, trying to find me a few people who can pronounce the name Yevgeny correctly. Most of them break their tongues, which is why I respond to Eugene or Oi or anything else. But let's read this out. So you have a loop interview after 2 weeks for network engineer position. How many stories should you prepare? Right, so you should prepare 2 stories per leadership principle. So what you need to do is find out how many interviews they have, how many interviews you're going to have. And every interviewer will typically interview you on 2 leadership principles. And so you need 2 stories per leadership principle. So let's assume that this is an L5 role. So for an L5 role, they might do, they might do 8 interviews, they might do 10 interviews, and it really depends. But let's just assume it's an 8 interviewer loop or panel interview. So 8, it will be, not 8 interviews, it's 4 interviews, which means 8 leadership principles, which means 2 stories per leadership principle. That takes you to 16. You can probably cut that down to about 13-ish, maybe 12 to 13 stories, because you can reuse some of your content. Like if you have a rich professional situation that you think you can sell under different leadership principles, then you can do that as well. So you can kind of get that efficiency out of your story bank, but that's basically how many stories you need to prepare. So remember, the mantra is 2 per leadership principle in an ideal world, right? And so then do the maths and see how many you need in total. But thank you for the question. Good morning to the anonymous LinkedIn user. So it sounds like so we've got sounds like LinkedIn is working, Evgeny. So cool. Right. So yeah, so you've just told me, Jossie, that you've got 5 interviews. Yes. So then I would say if it's 5 interviews, then it's 2 LPs per interview, so 10 LPs in total. So in an ideal world, you want 20 stories, but again, you can cut this down to around, I would say, 16 stories. You can get away if you reuse some of the stories in a clever way. Okay, but keep those questions going while we are addressing this next one. So here's a question from Niklas. From your experience, which one is the most popular or loved office in Europe by Amazonians? Ooh, interesting. I would say, and this is purely me speaking from my personal experience and from chatting with folks who I've worked with in Europe, I would say LHR 16 is probably the most favorite office. There was another office, I don't remember which index it was, which I believe has been closed down and folded under LHR 16, which is which is a new building. It's a new office. I personally preferred it to all of the other offices that I've ever worked in, because what I've found, and again, this is my kind of personal take on this, different offices across Europe, they have a different feel. Some of them have a very corporate feel, kind of very sort of white and yellow and sort of quite clinical feel to them. But LHR 16 has a very sort of very quirky feel to it. It's almost like if you've ever visited an office of an advertising agency, then it's got some quirkiness to it, some design. It definitely it doesn't feel like an office of like a Fortune 500 company. So it does have a lot of personality to it. And I would say for me personally, LHR 16 has always been the best office that I've ever worked in. And I would say for a lot of folks who come to London, they'd be like, wow, these are really, really cool digs. Also, if you compare what they've got in LHR 16, for example, versus what they have in Seattle offices. So in Seattle offices, they like these little pods for teams, which is a concept that I've always found a bit strange, because I come from an environment where open offices is typically kind of what folks are used to, and this is exactly what you would see in something like LHR 16. It's like vast open office with team spaces and plenty of pods at different spaces for you to get some privacy or to do some kind of focused head down work. But generally speaking, you have that massive open office space, which I personally find a lot preferable to kind of these kind of little pods that they've got in I believe most of the Seattle offices. So anyway, yeah, LHR 16 is probably that would be my gut feel that's the best office. But in terms of functional areas and kind of how these offices work, all Amazon offices across Europe are top notch. So doesn't matter where you end up. Cool. So here is a question from Evgeny. So should all questions be answered using the STAR framework during the interview process, or only specific types of questions? Right. So let me just caveat this. Let me just caveat this with this. So STAR as a storytelling framework, hugely popular, is something that if you're using the freely available content to prepare for behavioral interviews, that is the framework that you will most likely be using. Now, we are teaching a different framework. It's slightly more detailed, and it's based on Gigi and mine experience with interviewing lots of candidates and then coaching candidates, and it just allows you to it makes sure that you don't forget important details to signal your seniority. That being said, if you're not using our courses to prepare, if you're just using kind of the the free stuff, the free knowledge out there, then use the STAR framework to answer all behavioral interview questions. So if they're asking you, tell me about a time, the minute they say, tell me about a time, this is the time when you just go with the STAR framework. If they are asking you a hypothetical question, like, well, how would you do something, which is the type of a question that some teams, some interviewers sometimes may ask you during your initial phone interviews and phone screenings. It's not uncommon, although when you go through interview trainings, obviously you become an interviewer and you're being told that there's a good reason why Amazon prefers behavioral interview style questions and expects candidates to produce stories about situations in the past. There's a whole sort of HR science that has been in place since, I believe, late 70s, early 80s, and Amazon is, it's a truth-seeking company. So in my experience, so that's why they from my times working there, which is why they're using the behavioral interview format, and you would want to answer it in a STAR format. But some interviewers, for some different reasons, during phone screens, they might ask you something else. How would you do this, or how would you do that? So that would be a hypothetical. Or they can ask you, well, do you have experience with this? Can you do this? Can you do that? We at Day One Careers, as former hiring managers, interviewers, both have Fortune 500 and FTSE 100 experience. We don't believe these questions are useful, but you may get them still at Amazon. So the rule there is, if you can answer a hypothetical question with a story, basically convert it into a behavioral interview question, volunteer to do it. So if someone asks you, oh, do you have any experience with, I don't know, SQL, right? Some jobs at Amazon will require either in the kind of minimum requirements or in preferred qualifications, some SQL experience. So they might ask you, do you have any experience with SQL? If you can convert this and answer this in with a story, with a STAR, yeah, do it. Actually, yeah, I do have some experience with SQL. As it happens, just recently, I needed to analyze something. Would you like me to just give you an example of how I use my SQL skills? So Amazonians will always prefer, from our experience and our experience as coaches, if you can demonstrate a skill, which they might have asked in a hypothetical question, or in do you have a skill type of a question, with a real story, in which case you would use a STAR format. But they can always say, no, just tell me in general, have you any experience with SQL, in which case you just answer it as you would answer any classic interview question. So long story short, behavioral interview questions, answer with a STAR format. Any other question, if you can answer it with a story from your past in a STAR format, volunteer this. But if you can't, or they don't want you to, then just answer it the best way that you can, as you would answer questions in any of the other interviews with other companies. Right. So let's have this question. So this is Cupcake from 3 weeks ago. Hello, Cupcake. So I didn't get the offer. And the hiring team decided to go with the internal candidate. No, I'm so sorry. These internal candidates always keep on popping in. Okay, look. It happens. It happens sometimes. So they popped it right before my loop. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened. But let's keep reading. The recruiter did say that she wants to keep in touch, and if I find other roles that I'm interested in, I can reach out to her. Does this mean I have raised the bar. Thanks. Look, we don't really know. We don't really know. You might have. Um, you might have raised the bar. Um, they may not have. They may not have had a debrief on whether you've raised the bar or not. It's or you may not have raised the bar. We don't know. But the good thing is, they want to talk to you again. So my recommendation is reach out to the recruiter and ask them, did I deliver a bar raising loop? What's the status there? Because you now have a communication channel open. Now they may or may not share the feedback with you. It really depends on the recruiter, but you're now in a position, and if I was in the same position, I would think that, okay, well, the recruiter is clearly a bit, obviously they wanted to, I guess they were looking after you, and if you did have a positive experience, then they would be very much incentivized to try and find you another role and to close you as a candidate again, maybe with a different team. So I would say just get in touch with them and ask them what's the feedback from the loop, if you can share anything. And some of them will share something with you, some of them will not share anything with you. So it really depends. But you might have raised the bar, but they just don't have a role to offer you, in which case, it's a great record to have in your profile. Do look for other roles, similar roles on Amazon. Ask your recruiter to apply you internally to what's called a tag your profile against other roles. And the other thing that you can do, and just an idea that came to me, ask the recruiter, if you were to apply to a different role, if there was another role that is a fit to your profile, would you have to re-interview again, or would the interview process be shorter? And that is how you will know whether you've actually raised the bar or not. So, but do ask your recruiter. They might just be able to tell you. So I'm sorry it happened to you. It does happen sometimes. Happens at Amazon, happens with other companies. The only thing I can say to you, Cupcake, is the only candidates who will never ever get jobs are those who don't put themselves out there, and clearly you did. So keep hacking at it. Okay, so let's keep. So there's another question here from Evgeny. Haven't gone through all the content here yet, but I've noticed that you and Gigi mentioned Amazon Questions Bank a few times. How do I access the bank of questions? So look, just like all other companies that run behavioral interviews, there are some example questions that they may use, and Amazon also has a collection of questions like that. We don't have access to it because it's a confidential document that only Amazon has, and that's why we do mention it, because it exists, and it's not something that's unique to Amazon. It's I would imagine that if you interview with any Fortune 500 company, there will be some sort of interview question bank there if they're using behavioral interviews. Now, whether the interviewers will actually use that question bank to draw questions from it, it really depends. My experience being a hiring manager at Amazon back in the days before I left, sometimes I used questions from that document, sometimes I didn't, because at some point in time you just intimately understand the essence of leadership principles, having rubbed shoulders with people. Culture kind of sinks in. But we have something better for you. What we have is we have actually compiled our own list of questions, example questions. We completely invented them, right? Which probe on kind of similar areas that that the leadership principles are probing for. So if you wait until the very end, I'm going to tell you where to get that list of questions. So just hang in there, and I'll get you that resource. So let's keep going. So here's a question from LinkedIn. I have a rich experience in program management in automotive industry, a different functional area. I want to work for Amazon. Is this a good move? Do I need to follow any different interview preparation process? So it's generally, is moving to Amazon a good move for you? Well, it depends. Depends. Do you want to work in technology? Do you want to work at Amazon? Is there anything about Amazon that is attractive to you? So I don't know. It's kind of like you tell me. And also, don't forget, whenever you start interviewing with Amazon during your first initial screens, they will ask you, why do you want to work at Amazon? So, I have to back this one back to you. Why do you want to? What's attractive to you at Amazon? Why do you want to work there? In terms of preparation for Amazon, yes. So Amazon tends to interview in a very rigid style. So if you're interviewing for program manager roles, these would be classified as non-technical roles. So your interview process will be mostly behavioral. And yes, there is an entire process that we recommend that you follow. So you do need to prepare yourself for behavioral interviews as an interview format. You need to realize that Amazon will test. Amazon will expect you to share situations from your professional past that align with Amazon's core competencies, which Amazon calls the 16 leadership principles. Other companies also have core competencies or values. At Amazon, these are called 16 leadership principles. And the biggest difference between Amazon and a whole bunch of other companies that I've either worked for or I'm aware of how they interview is that Amazon internally just lives by its leadership principles. That's, you end up talking about LPs by the water cooler, by the coffee machine. So I am not joking. They're very serious about their core competencies. They look for the manifestations, the behaviors that map to the 16 leadership principles in the responses that you're interviewing. And so that's why you need to understand really in depth what those 16 LPs are all about. And I guess that's why our business exists. So if you go to the website that is currently in the ticker at the bottom, all of the content and materials that we've designed, they all prepare you from A to Z on how to interview with Amazon. So now, next question. All right, before I go into the next question, guys, and thank you for dropping all these questions in. Please keep them coming. We've got more time, but I have a huge favor to ask you, folks. We create and keep on adding lots of free content for everyone. We obviously have, we're a business. We've got plenty of paid content, and I think it's the best in the industry. But we also want to make sure that we also have a very, very strong set of free content, including these sessions, our YouTube channel, our blog, some AI tools that are also free for you to use that we've developed. We are asking you for just a very simple favor, right? Just the only thing we're asking you in return, if you could just add a like to this stream and send us a question or a comment in the comments. And the reason why we're asking you guys to do this is because every like means that 10 other people will be exposed to the content from our YouTube channel. And I can tell you that one of the reasons why we've created this YouTube channel is because we saw that there's a whole bunch of misinformation about interviewing with Amazon from various different creators. And we just want to make sure that the most accurate and experienced information gets to candidates, because you know what happens in a lot of cases, candidates watch all sorts of rubbish on YouTube, and then they come to us, and then they tell us, "Oh, sorry, we didn't get the job because we did something that someone else advised us on," and then we have to re-prepare them. So you can help people avoid having this happen. So if you could just give us a like, it'll takes you 2 seconds to do that, and we'll be eternally grateful. But that's all it is. That's enough of the public service announcement. Let's keep going and answer other questions. So here's one from Pablo. What steps should I follow to prepare the stories for the LP behavioral questions? I'm having troubles to search specific scenarios that are wide range enough about for raising the bar. Right. So, folks and Pablo, there are two things that they're looking for in a behavioral interview. Number one is they're looking for cultural fit with Amazon. So in other words, are you an Amazonian? That's why they're looking for behaviors that map to their core competencies, which are the 16 leadership principles. Your stories, do they demonstrate, do you tell about situations where you've demonstrated the right behaviors? There is no level for that. You're not raising the bar on those. You're raising the bar on your experience, because they're trying to figure out whether you will you coming with experience that is better than 50% of the current Amazonians doing the same job at the same level. So what's the strategy for you to raise the bar? The thing is, the bar is internal at Amazon, and you don't know what that bar is, right? And the bar is different for different roles, for different levels. And the way that the bar is assessed is everyone who's interviewing you, they need to think, okay, so if you're interviewing, let's say, for a senior program manager role, right? So it's an L6 individual contributor role. They're going to be thinking, okay, so based on other L6 program managers, have I heard from this candidate, do I see experience that is better than 50% of Amazonians that are currently doing the same job at the same level? Now, that bar is meant to be continuously run, right? At least that's the theory. In practice, it probably differs, right? But that's why you have the bar raiser in there. And that's what the bar raiser is thinking about. And because the bar raisers at Amazon interview all across the business, they get pulled into various different interview processes. They have a very good benchmark. So it is impossible for you to know, okay, do I have what it takes to raise the bar or not? The only thing that you can do is to select the best content, the best stories from your professional past that will maximize the chance of you raising the bar. Well, whether you will actually raise the bar or not, you can't control it. All you can control is going down the memory lane, trying to recall situations that map to the leadership principles, and select the ones that are your best sellers, right? The creme de la creme, the best. Just bring the best content that you have. Now, we go in a lot of details in our Amazon Interview Whiz courses in terms of giving you a strategy that maximizes your chances to raise the bar and demonstrate that seniority. But if I were to boil this down to one powerful tip, and just bring your best, and then you have to just let the chips fall where they may. I'm afraid that's your strategy. Right. Let's keep going. So there's another question here from Evgeny. So do the interviews within the loop happen back to back or within a span of a few days? So the two most popular schedules is back to back in one day, and another one is split across 2 days, so 2 and 3. Does it mean that 100% in cases they fall into these two scenarios, so either 1 day or 2 days? No, there are some edge cases. There's some edge cases where sometimes, due to various different issues, availability, logistics, I mean, you name it, some candidates would have had two, and then next week there's one. Anything can happen because, again, folks, you're interviewing with the business, right? As you know, at Amazon, the recruiter is there to find you, to screen you, but then they hand you over to the hiring manager. They're handing you over to the hiring team. The hiring team interviews everyone on top of their daily jobs. So sometimes people get sick. Sometimes diaries conflict. Sometimes there are business trips. Who knows? So yeah, but in most cases, it's either 1 day or 2 days. And I would imagine that you might even be able to advise what works best for you, in which case, have a think. Personally, I've always preferred panels that are just done in 1 day, but some candidates prefer otherwise. So it really depends on what your preferences are. So here is Lamidi, who has an interview on Thursday for an area manager, and you're nervous. I totally understand. And, there's nothing that I can say to you right now, like, don't be nervous, it's going to be okay, that will take this away. So Thursday is, you still have some time, and depending on kind of how many interviews you have, this is, it's a good time to build your story bank, make sure it's in good shape, that your interview stories are well structured, that you've practiced them, right? So this is a good time to start practicing them. Either rehearse them and recite them in front of a mirror, in front of your computer camera, in front of your friends, relatives, partners, anyone who you can get to sort of practice your interviews. The reason why we talk about the importance of practicing interviews, folks, and doing it not necessarily just with us, even though we obviously do offer coaching sessions, and these are superbly useful for you to get sort of feedback and check your stories over. But if not with us, just with anyone, seriously. And the reason why we recommend that is because the human brain makes memories when when you're asleep, right? That's what happens. That's why when you've ever needed to learn a long piece of text by heart, say you're learning a speech, right? You need to do some public speaking and you need to learn it by heart. The only way to do it is bit by bit by bit over a long period of time, and you need to have sleeps separating these bouts of learning, because your brain will make connections while you sleep. So make sure that you do a little bit of practice today, then have a good night's sleep, do a little bit of practice, and don't cram anything the night before. You do want to make sure you have a really good night's sleep, because you'd be surprised how important a good night's sleep is, just to get you in that zone, just to make sure that you can recall those questions from the short-term memory, as opposed to just being nervous and just going, you know what I mean. But otherwise, look, you're interviewing with people on the other side. They're also people just like yourself. They have exactly the same ambitions and concerns, and they really want to hire someone. Hiring at Amazon, from my experience when I worked there, is not, it's not easy, because whenever there is an opportunity in your team, you always feel it as a hiring manager, because the company is so lean. There aren't any roles usually that are just spare or redundant, and you always feel the pain of having an understaffed team. So they do really want to hire you. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. But good luck otherwise. So here's a question from Aparna. I was asked a behavioral question, but my interviewer told me to rethink, as I did not answer the question, even though the example is great. She seems happy with the second answer. What are my chances? I wouldn't be that concerned about this, Aparna. The thing is, it happens, right? Sometimes you misunderstand the question. And again, without being a fly on the wall, it's very difficult to kind of know what exactly went there. But I can imagine what could have happened is that you volunteered a story that did not answer the question. The example itself might have contained some behaviors, some evidence of behaviors that mapped to a different leadership principle. And I don't, if your interviewer is experienced, right? And it really depends on kind of the quality of your interviewer. But if I was interviewing you, right? Obviously, I'm no longer at Amazon, but say if I was interviewing you, and you gave me an example that didn't map to the right leadership principle, but it had some experience, some behaviors that mapped to a different leadership principle, I would still take all the notes down. And when I was evaluating your responses, I would say, okay, well, even though I didn't interview you on this leadership principle, I've seen some behaviors that map to a different leadership principle, and I would give you credit on that one. But obviously what your interviewer did, and it's exactly what they should have done, is they asked you to rethink and to come up with an example that was answering the question. I think this was a great great behavior on the part of your interviewer. They did what they're supposed to, because their job is to take that, to find that evidence, to help you deliver that evidence during the behavioral interview, and they did what they should have done. So I'm not hugely concerned, Aparna, about this. Yes, it might not have been the smoothest experience possible, but if you delivered the right response, and and you shared a bar raising example, then then it's fine. That's kind of how I would see it. So here is a question from Revathi. Can you please tell me when we can expect a call from the recruiter after the debrief if the outcome is positive? So Amazon has what they call a 5-2 or a 2-5 rather promise, and it's something that they share with candidates. Um, it's open, so they always aim to give you a decision within 2 business days from a phone interview and within 5 business days from your panel interview or your loop interview. And in my experience, when I worked there, and again in my experience as now a coach with all of our students, I would say that in most cases they will hold on to that promise. So within 5 business days, you should receive the outcome of your loop. Does that happen every time? Sometimes it doesn't, but when it doesn't, it's usually because something got in the way. Logistics, they couldn't conduct a debrief. I don't know, for various different reasons. That in most cases, 99% of cases, just have absolutely nothing to do with your performance. In general, I would say, folks, and keep those questions coming, because this is it's the last question that we have in the queue, and we still have 14 minutes, folks, to keep chatting. But in general, look, when you are in the process with Amazon, there's a lot of things that's going to be happening that no one will explain to you. Like, the status of your job will change, and it will change in the in the system that you will be looking at Amazon. Maybe the role will disappear, right? If you saw this role on LinkedIn, maybe it disappeared from LinkedIn, or maybe if you were applying directly from their website, the role can disappear from website, then it could be reposted, and there's a whole bunch of movement that happens while you are waiting for your panel or your phone screen, and you might be looking at all of this and you're just freaking out. You're like, what in the world is happening there? And should I be concerned? And we didn't get any questions like this in this show yet. But in previous shows, yeah, it's oftentimes folks come in and they would say, oh, the status of my job changed from this to this. What's happening? Should I be concerned? And for all of these questions, my answer is you should only be concerned with the things that you can control. And if you were to magically rewatch the last 20 of these YouTube shows that I've attended, this is my message to just about everyone. You can only control the things that you have. You should only be concerned with things that you can control or have a significant degree of influence over. This is not life advice, take it or leave it. But for interviews, for sure, because there's so many different things that are happening inside the company while you're waiting for your interview, or while you're waiting for your next date, or while anything else is happening, and it's impossible for you to know what's happening. And also, in a lot of cases, they just can't tell you because maybe some things are confidential, right? I know that, for example, and this is not an Amazon example, when I was interviewing with Apple, and this was during the pandemic in 2021, the periods of radio silence were quite long. I kept politely following up every week, but I knew that things are happening. Some things take time. I'm pretty sure, putting myself in the hiring manager's shoes, I would want all of my recruitment loops to go very, very quickly, because it doesn't serve my interest to have radio silence. I would either want to move on to the next candidate and deliver the decision as fast as I can. So, in fact, everyone in your interview loop wants things to move really fast, but sometimes they just can't, and sometimes there are many different systems involved. So don't be concerned with things that you can't control. Only be concerned with things that you can control, and which is your interview preparation and your interview performance. So let's keep going. So there's another question from Miklos. Do you have data about the percentage of your students that get hired at Amazon? No, we don't, unfortunately. We'd love to, but you see what happens is, and this is something that Gigi and I have discussed plenty of times. What happens is, in most cases, when folks are done with their interviews, we don't hear them and we don't see them at all, regardless of the outcome. Now, some of them, it's a tiny minority of folks, they tell us what happened with their interviews, but in most cases they don't. this business and what we do is a train station. And that's how, after doing this for what, like almost like 3 years or just over 3 years, this is what we figured out. It's a train station. Folks come in, they have a very, we have a burst of activity together. They come and they get the content, they buy our courses, they get the coaching, they use our AI products. And then once their interviews are done, that's it. They're just basically gone, with a few minor exceptions who, come and say hello to other candidates and, behave as, as alumni. So we don't know, whether they get the job, they don't get the job. We have no idea. We've got plenty of testimonials on the website. So, you can go and have a look. So it's www.day1.careers/testimonials. You can join our community, which is free, and you can ask around about the quality of our products. But those testimonials are just a tiny percentage of students that we've had, and what happens to most of them, we have no idea. Also, I think, there's a stigma associated still with using interview preparation services. It's similar to, I guess, in some cases when you're using additional help to prepare for, I don't know, exams or something like that. I never understood why that's the case. Like when I was, so I had a situation where I was preparing for interviews with McKinsey. I didn't get the role at McKinsey, but I used some preparation services, and I openly talked about it to everyone who I knew, and I thought it was great. But anyway, that's why it's a long-winded answer to your question, Miklos. No, we don't, because most people just run away and they don't tell us what happened. Another question from Evgeny. Could you provide a brief overview of the interview loop for the LSEX position? I haven't yet understood well enough what happens between the interview with the hiring manager and the panel interview. So I'm going to have to use, Evgeny, a very sort of classic L6 non-technical role. So between the interview with the hiring manager and the panel, well, what happens is very simply. So the person who interviewed you, it might have been a hiring manager, might have been someone else, between the phone screen and the loop. So they would have taken their notes. They would have to evaluate your performance, write up some notes, and make a decision whether to progress you to the next stage or not. And they would just have to provide a rationale for their decision, and that's pretty much it. So it's every company these days, not just Amazon, every company has applications tracking systems where applicants are sort of tracked in the system from their application all the way to their hiring. And Amazon has one of those, like many of them have, and it has a different requirements depending on the interview stage. And that's basically all that happens. What they do, obviously, you might know this right now, is that they don't make up their mind on the spot, right? Like they're meant to take notes. They're meant to kind of come back to your profile and make a decision then. And I guess they have the process of just entering the notes and making up your mind during the phone screen isn't as rigorous as it is during the loop, because obviously you have a lot more people. Because the cost of moving you into the loop is, I guess, it's a lot less to the organization making that decision as opposed to extending an offer. But yeah, that's pretty much the only thing that happens. But let's keep going. Oh yeah, well, let me just make sure that I've that I answered everything. So, and you wanted a brief overview of the interview loop for the L6 position. Yes, so the interview loop will be typically for an L6, there will be 5 interviews. Every interviewer will have 2 leadership principles to cover, and they will have 1 or 2 questions prepared for the leadership principle. Actually, no, they will have 2 questions prepared for every LP. How many of them they'll be able to go through? That kind of depends on how the interview goes. Sometimes they'll be able to go through all 4 questions during the interview, so 2 per LP. Sometimes, like in my case, sometimes I would start the interview with 2 questions per LP, and then I would realize that I only have one one time left for one question for the next LP, and so I will only use one question for the next LP. So it really depends. It's a live conversation. So you would have these 5 interviews either in one day, or you would have them split across multiple days. And then once you go through all those interviews, this is where the 5 business days radio silence comes. So folks get together on a debrief together with the bar raiser, and then they deliberate, and they sometimes change their mind. Even the bar raiser can change their mind, which is why never keep your best stories just for the bar raiser. So aim for that consistent level performance across your entire interview, because the hiring decision, or the hire or no hire decision, is based on the deliberation and everyone's input, and people do change their mind, and that includes the hiring manager and the bar raiser, one way or the other. So don't try to almost like find that sort of golden interview to influence one specific individual. Just keep your interview performance same across, and that's pretty much it. That's all that happens. Right, another question from Revathi. A job advert on the portal was updated following my loop interview with the hiring manager. Does it suggest ongoing candidate search, potentially indicating a lack of inclination towards your candidacy? Well, as I mentioned, it could indicate a 55 million different things. So you just never know. You just have to wait. You just have to wait for the outcome. Absolutely anything can happen. Right, folks. So while I think we can have time for one more question, but while we're waiting for that question, let me just talk to you about a few freebies that we have. So as I mentioned, we've got plenty of free stuff for you to use, and for all of you, we've gathered links in here. So if you go to www.day1.careers/free-stuff, then you get all the free stuff. So what do we have for you? We have a free course on customer obsession. So if you go navigate to that URL, you'll be able to get that course where we teach you how to answer questions on customer obsession. We'll give you a deep dive into what customer obsession really means. And customer obsession is kind of straightforward if you just read into the competency, but the way that Amazon treats it is actually quite different to how a whole bunch of other companies treat it. So get that course, and we will tell you exactly how Amazon thinks about customer obsession. So we decipher it for you. We break it down into individual sub-themes, and then we give you an example mock interview so you can see exactly what great looks and sounds like. And then we also go into specific behaviors that your interviewers might be looking for when they interview you on customer obsession, so that you can then, why are we teaching you this? So that you can then go down the memory lane, go back into introspection, and then you'll be able to recall situations from your professional past when you'd be like, yes, so it sounds like they're looking for this behavior and that behavior. I actually think this would be a great example to use, because this is where I was shining in those behaviors. And so go get that course. It's absolutely free, and it will give you a great idea of what a good interview response looks like. And also we've put together a great resource that's called Amazon Interview Tool Pack. So you have over 90 example Amazon interview questions fully vetted by Gigi and myself. This should be enough for you to prepare, to give you a flavor of the types of questions that are being asked. Do not go to Glassdoor. Do not go to random resources where folks are crowdsourcing all these questions, because most of them, from the last time we've looked on Glassdoor and similar resources, those questions that they have in there, 99% of them will never be asked in an Amazon interview. Such as, for example, folks come to our community and they're like, oh, how do we answer questions about failures? I'm like, Amazon never asks you about failures. There are positive ways in and there are negative ways into leadership principles, but they're not asking about failures. There's always a specific twist to them asking you about a time when something didn't go well. So get those resources, get our course, get the Amazon interview tool pack, and with all of those resources, you also get access to our free community. And in our free community, you can meet other candidates and set up interview practice together with them. And it's important to practice. I already mentioned that. So do that. Just grab your Calendly link, tidycal.com, anything, just drop it into the Interview Buddies channel, and you'll find someone to practice with. What you will also find is in our main Amazon interview channel, in that free community, we have a chatbot that is trained on all of our YouTube content and all of our blog content, and it's there answering your questions. So all you need to do is start a new thread, tag the bot, and there you go. And then the bot will answer any of the questions that you have. So plenty of free resources. Go get them. They're out there for you. That's what we're working for. We want to make sure you guys get access to the best resources out there. But let's see what else we have. Do we have any other questions that we can talk about very quickly? So there's the last question here, and I'm just going to answer this question. Hopefully, that's it. That's the last question. All right, folks. Well, I think that's it. So we've got everything covered. Thanks for coming. Good luck with your interviews. Get the free stuff. Join our community, and then otherwise, we'll see you next week. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.